and welcome to our Star Wars chat. I don't really remember how this came about in the first place, but was it when you guys were doing your One Direction live breakdown of all
Yes.
your stuff,
Yeah.
and I was like, Star Wars something? Is that how it came about?
I think it might have, yeah. I read a bunch of Darth Vader stuff last year.
Yeah, your 2023 was dominated by Darth Vader.
Yeah. As
So
it should be.
as it should be. I have not actually read any of the Star Wars books, so I'm coming at this strictly from cinematic perspectives. But you both have read some of the Star Wars books, correct? Or is it just Yolanda?
Yeah, both of us. It's been a pretty recent thing though, like as of
Last couple of years.
last like 2-3 years, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was always a bit like slightly snobby, not snobby, I just dismissive towards
Sure.
the books. I mean, I didn't have anything against them. I was just like, yeah, Star Wars is the movies for me.
Yeah.
But
I hear
I'm sure this will come up in the chat. The mild dissatisfaction with
you.
the sequel trilogy kind of changed my mind. So
Yes. So I can't remember my exposure to Star Wars. Like, I don't remember the first time I sat down and watched Star Wars, though. But I remember it kind of just always being there. Like, I don't remember a part of my childhood without Star Wars being there. Do you guys remember the first time you encountered Star Wars? Or is it kind of like me that it was just always sort of there in the background?
no, I do not remember my first encounter with Star Wars. I had a really old box set, VHS box set in
Yeah.
Spain, of
Was it
the
in
original
English
trilogy.
or in
No,
Spanish?
in Spanish.
Nice.
I didn't watch Star Wars in English till I was about 16.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well,
how
I
did
watched the
Vader's
new one.
voice sound in Spanish? Like, how does Vader sound in Spanish?
It's exactly the same. Like the
Okay.
guy doing the voice
He's very good.
he just does a Vader impression but speaks Spanish. And the same with
Awesome.
Yoda. I actually prefer Yoda in Spanish.
Interesting. So, Yolanda, was your first experience probably also in Spanish or maybe
Um
German or
it
English?
was in Spanish. It was in Spanish actually, yeah. I do remember because I was a bit older because neither of my parents would have been super into Star Wars, so I
Mm,
wasn't exposed to it as like a really young kid. I think I was probably like 12 or something. And
mm.
I came back from like a summer where I spent a lot of time with my cousins who were really into Star Wars. And I came back and I told my mother, I didn't know what they were talking about. And she was like, do you want to watch Star Wars? I was like, yeah, I want to watch, let's do it. And she was shocked at how obsessed I got.
Yeah. Okay. So, original trilogy, I think we can agree the best trilogy. It's the superior of all the Star Wars trilogies. So within the first trilogy itself, most people tend to have a preference ranking. What is your individual preferences? Like, how would you rank the first three?
I am a basic person,
Me too.
and it's Empire,
Empire? Yeah.
the original, and Return of the Jedi.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
the
actually,
exact same.
I think I'm Empire, Return of the Jedi, New Hope.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So I'm with Carlos that I'm 546.
Yeah.
Empire is the best one. I don't know which one you're referencing as being the correct order. If it's 546, then that is correct. But prequel original, we'll get there, Evie. Don't you
We'll get
worry.
there.
But I love Empire. So we have a constant conversation in my household. Yes, 546. That we love Empire. Like Empire is S tier for sure. And and by I mean I was personally affronted by 7 and 8 so much that I refused to watch 9. And was very reluctant to go see Andor because of it. I was like, no, I don't trust anything that these people will ever do again. And my best friend, who's a massive Star Wars fan, was like, no, we need to go see Andor. Like, Andor is going to be legit.
Oh, you mean Rogue One?
Rogue One, yeah. Thank you, Rogue One.
Yeah.
I always call it Andor, but yeah, Rogue One. And when we saw it, I was like, this was amazing. So for me, I have Rogue One and Empire pretty close to each other.
Okay.
Like, depending on the day and my mood, it kind of fluctuates as to which gets the top spot. So
Interesting.
So this is such a common thing in Star Wars fandom where you'll have two people aggressively agree, and then you'll have a massive disagreement immediately after.
yeah,
Because I'm not the biggest fan of Rogue One. I think it's probably one of the best made films that they've done in the last 10 years or more now, whatever. I can't remember when it came out, but I just didn't really care about it.
Yeah.
But Andor, the Disney Plus show, is amazing.
Perfection. It's so
amazing.
Good. It's
And
so good. Yeah.
Surprisingly, because like the other stuff is whatever.
Yeah.
I like Mando. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but I enjoy it.
Yeah. We did the first 2 seasons, and then we watched episode 1 of season 3 and thought, this is trash. What has happened here? Because it was all just fighting. The whole thing was fighting. And I know, don't come at me, the Mandalorian is bounty hunter. Like, there's going to be fighting in it. But at least it felt like there was a bit of a plot for the first 2 seasons, but it felt sort of concluded when Luke showed up and took Grogu with him. I was like, okay, this is a complete story for me. I don't really need more. I know that other people really wanted more in that narrative, but we just didn't get on board. And then we never watched Book of Boba Fett. We just weren't super interested. Did you guys watch Boba Fett at all?
Nope.
Same. So
Exactly the same.
I was in the same situation as you with Rogue One, where I was so burned by Disney Star Wars so far that I was just not interested. I was like, I don't care. I don't care. I think my interest just fell off a cliff after The Force Awakens, but I wasn't angry yet because I just thought The Force Awakens was a rehash, and I I disappointed but not angry, you know. And after Last Jedi, I was angry.
Exactly. I was the same. Go ahead, Carlos.
I had an amazing time with Force Awakens when we went to see it. Like, I just cherished that experience because the hype.
Yeah.
I went to see that with like 11 of my best friends. Like, all the lads went to see Force Awakens, and then my parents came, and it was at midnight. So like, we went to the midnight screen, and my parents were there. My mom was so excited, and it was great because it felt like Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I haven't rewatched it a ton, so I don't really know how it holds up because I did not like what followed.
No, we similarly, when the prequels came out, my family all got dolled up and went out and all saw it together, which my parents don't go to the theater ever. So for them to actually go see a movie was a big deal. And then when the sequels came out, was the same thing. We all went. My husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, came with us as well. And I looked at him midway through the movie and I was like, if they kill Han, I'm going to riot. Like, I'm going to riot. And it was playing out to be such a repeat of New Hope. I was like, someone's going to die on a bridge. Like, it's going to be someone. And as soon as that scene took place, I was like, I'm done here. And I don't think I spoke for like 2 hours afterwards. I was so seething with anger. I could have turned into a Sith Lord in that moment and just given into my rage. I was so angry. Oh, no.
I totally get that. Yeah. But like, especially with what followed, they tried to do something interesting with Last Jedi, and then I feel like they just should have stuck to that and then they tried to course correct.
Oh, the course correction was just
Because like The Last Jedi on its own, if you look at it on its own, I think it's actually a pretty good film and what it's trying to do.
Is that the one where Leia like floats through space?
Yeah. If we forget about that bit, the rest of it, and then there's also like who's the general guy? There's a really dumb side plot.
Oh, I'm the spy. That's
I'm the spy. Yeah.
I think that's
stupid.
Is that not in episode 9? I can't remember.
No, I think that's in. I don't know. Anyway, that's all crap. But like, I think if they had set out to make a trilogy of films with all of it envisioned out, and Last Jedi was the middle film, and you take out a couple of cheesy crap parts, it could have been good. But yeah,
not for me. No, that's. I mean, if you look at 7 and 4, right, they have all the parallels. And then if you look at 5 and 8, there's similar parallels where it's Yoda and Luke that kind of go through this transformation and journey, and then they become one with the Force and blah, 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 blah. I remember thinking with that casino scene that happened that lasted what felt for like half an hour that they were just running. And I was like, why are we here? What is happening? The answer is nothing is happening. Leia's floating through space miraculously. People are at this space casino, and now we have people just shooting each other at the end, and Luke is just going to walk into the middle of them all and disappear. Like, what is this movie?
Yeah. But if okay, so we can come back to the negativity because there's a lot of negativity. And I'm already like making a list in my head of like, oh, that's shit. I want to talk about that. I want to give out about that. But just to bring it back to like how we rank the movies and stuff. So the first trilogy is my favorite, but it doesn't contain my favorite individual film. My favorite individual movie is Revenge of the Sith.
Interesting. Okay. Let's talk about our prequels a little bit here.
Okay. So experience with the prequels is like I watched the original trilogy and I don't know, basically from the moment that I could sit upright. So I think the first film I saw in cinemas was Phantom Menace, probably.
Oh wow, okay.
Or one of the first ones anyway. So like I did love the prequels pretty much my whole childhood until I got a little older and a little more critical. And I just sort of loved Revenge of the Sith for the longest time, and I thought the other two were really bad, apart from Darth Maul. But I've grown more of an appreciation later for the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. You, however, have other opinions.
I love the prequels. They're my favorite. They're not. Are they the best? No, I know they're not. But they're my favorite. I just love the story of the prequels so much that I don't care that the execution is shaky. Questionable. I watched them like. Obviously, the prequels were already out when I watched them. There was just 6 movies, so I watched 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. And at the time, as a 12-year-old, I just loved them, like all of them, and I saw no problems. And then when I later found out that, you know, the internet had very strong opinions about the prequels, it was kind of heartbreaking. And for a long time, I just loved them in secret. And now I'm like, I actually never turned on the prequels. I would never say like, oh yeah, I think they're bad, because I actually don't think they're as bad as people say they are.
There's bits and pieces. There's definitely bits and pieces. I rewatched them. So after having my daughter and I just not being able to move because I had this new appendage on me, basically, I decided to rewatch all of the Star Wars films and probably watched the prequels, much to the chagrin of Josh, like 15 times in the span of a month and a half. Like I just kept having it on loop in the background on Disney Plus. And I don't hate them. But there's things about them that I hate. So
Yeah.
as a kid, when I saw them, because I saw them all in the theater, they were targeted for that age. I feel like they were meant for the millennials. They weren't meant for the original audience
Yeah.
for Star Wars, which I think is where a lot of the controversy comes in, because that
Yeah.
original audience was waiting so long, and
Yeah.
then the story wasn't catered to them. So I could understand them feeling slighted by that. But I would have loved to see George Lucas follow through with Jar Jar being a Sith Lord, because I 100% think that he is meant to have been a villain and
Mhm.
not this weird, annoying thing. But the backlash was so significant for him that he had to kind of pivot. But I definitely feel like it was supposed to be something much more significant than
So do you
what we
think
got.
Jar Jar was like play acting, like sort of
Mhm.
pretending to be
Yeah.
as bumbly as he was?
100%. Yeah, this is Jar Jar should have been the main villain of the sequel trilogy. Maybe. There's this whole theory. People need to look it up because it's really excellent. That's very
Yeah.
detailed, and it is the Jar Jar Sith theory, and it makes so much sense when you look at it from that lens. You go, oh, okay, I see why some of these things were happening and why he's in places that maybe he shouldn't be, and so on and so forth. But looking back on it, the casting I felt for the original trilogy, Ewan McGregor is phenomenal as Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, he's such a good young Obi-Wan. Like, there's really nothing wrong with that. His miniseries, on the other hand, was terrible. But him in the prequels, I thought was very good. Liam Neeson, I thought was fine for the one film that he's in. Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman is where I think a lot of the problems emerge from those prequels. And neither one should be blamed, because I think individually and collectively as actors, they're fine. It's the material that they were given that is super cringy. Like, it's just cringe. And when you look at it, even as someone that likes romance or, is fine with like toxic tropes and stuff, the language and dialogue between those two makes my skin crawl.
Yeah. Especially in Attack of the Clones.
Oh, it's so bad. It's so
cringe.
bad.
Like, you get like those goosebumps, like shivers down your neck. You're like, ugh, what are you saying? And it's something like it's also just the delivery, and you can tell it's George Lucas directing him to do that, because George thinks that he's really romantic, but he's not.
No, he's not. Not even a little bit.
He's like, so Hayden, I want you to do this thing, like, can you look at him really intensely and then just like breathe.
Breathe very hard and like lean in awkwardly. It's just a whole thing.
So he's just like, you're exactly how I remember you in my dreams. And then like just stare. And it's like, don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. The behind the scenes footage of Lucas directing just highlights how little he gives his actors to work with. I agree. I mean, George has his area of expertise, and his area of expertise is world creation, I feel like. And that's basically where it ends. In terms of his dialogue writing and romantic dialogue writing, it's very seriously lacking. But I thought the underlining plot for the prequels was fine. The stuff with the clones was relatively interesting, and it had very good choreography and fight work for the two for films 2 and 3 specifically. I feel like I'm not super interested in the Darth Maul storyline. I know for a lot of people that watch Clone Wars, they're more into Darth Maul, and that his fight scene was the big thing because he had that dual-ended lightsaber in episode 1. But the scene with Yoda in Attack of the Clones was one of my favorite fight scenes with Christopher Lee, whom I love so very much. And then in Revenge of the Sith, that whole scene on Lava Land with Obi-Wan and Anakin is so great, like that elongated scene, because when you watched it the first time as a kid, everyone thought, oh, well, it's just computer graphics, like they're not really doing anything. And then when you watch the behind the scenes footage, it's like, oh no, they had to learn this whole choreographed thing. It's actually them doing all of this stuff. So I feel like they deserve props that we weren't necessarily giving them, you know, 20 years ago.
And that's why that fight is so good, because it's real. Like,
it is actually earned in those movies as well.
Yeah. And like, I think I agree with everything that you've said, like saying that I love the prequels, but I agree with everything. Like, I think that the plot is great. I just love society sliding into fascism. Like, I just find that really interesting, you know?
I love when society does that.
I just love it. Yeah.
Love it. And yeah, they're just so fun to watch because of the choreographies and because of Ewan McGregor. And I love Hayden Christensen as Anakin when he's not talking to Padme.
Yes, exactly. When it's any other scene, great. With Padme, it's horrendous.
Yeah, and it's just, this is something that discovering the extended universe in books and comics has been great for, because you get, like, I read the Revenge of the Sith novelization, where you get to read the whole story that is the same as the movie. Obviously, it's not changing anything. It's adding some scenes that are like deleted scenes that are not in the movie. And Evie. But then he adds like internal dialogue and like monologue and thoughts and stuff. And obviously there's like no bad directing involved. And it just highlights how good the story actually is. Like, because it takes out a lot of the cringe.
Yes.
So,
and you wouldn't think about it in typically, right, when we think of a film, we don't think, oh, that would work and translate well to a book. But when we're thinking about the overarching storyline for Anakin, I actually feel like that is something that would work so much better in a novel format, because you get that internal monologue. And for someone who becomes a very irredeemable character, in my opinion, I want to see what is happening inside that kind of makes those switches happen, as opposed to, I don't like sand, and then goes and kills, you know, all the sand people. And then we have this like big switch, and then he's killing all the Jedi, and now he's Vader. Like, that to me, it just felt very abrupt. And I know in Clone Wars, people feel like in the show or the TV series Clone Wars that is it called Clone Wars? Am I saying the right thing? Because I know, okay, right, Attack of the Clones is the second one. So that it gets more fleshed out in that narrative, but it makes sense that there would be books to kind of fill in that gap. I just think that makes sense.
So we watched Clone Wars only the first time for only the first time in 2023, and I thought it was fine. The later seasons were pretty good.
Yeah.
But I think my brain can't really get past Ahsoka being so important to Anakin's character and never being a thing in the movies. So like, it feels too much like fan fiction.
Yeah.
Where I actually kind of feel like some of the books that I've read feel closer to an actual continuation or filling in the blanks than Clone Wars did. And so like, I didn't really buy Anakin in the Clone Wars, to be honest, which might be an unpopular opinion among Star Wars fans, but there's a lot of that in Star Wars fandom.
Everybody has unpopular Star Wars opinions.
Everyone's got a hot take or several hot takes for Star Wars. But the thing I will say that I love about the prequels the most, which is very niche and not at all relevant, is I loved the costume design for the prequels.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it did a really great job at expanding the universe just by what
Mhm.
people wore, which I
Yeah.
always love when attention to detail like that happens, because I
Yeah.
love learning about people through clothing. And I really did love that. And as much as I loathe Padme because of the dialogue they gave her outfits are 10 out of 10 most of the time. So I appreciated that quite a bit. And as ever, John Williams has phenomenal scores for all three movies. There's just beautiful music in the prequels, but that's my feeling
Also,
overall.
I think the interesting thing about Star Wars is like the generation, or the generational aspect of it as well, where I guess was a prequel baby.
Mhm.
So like as a 10-year-old, the prequels were just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
a critical analytical bone in my body as a
Right.
10-year-old. So it was just great.
Mhm.
And I don't think growing up really affected that in any serious way, to the point where
Mhm.
I'm like, no, I'll never watch those. I just love them too much. But I know that there are probably kids now that in 10 years will look back on Force Awakens and Last Jedi and the
Yeah.
Rise of Turd Fest and love it. You know, maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't
think
know.
Yeah, I think it's depending on like what you can look past, because
Yeah.
I know a lot of people can't look past the like cringe in the prequels, and that's fair. Like I get that. I can look past it because I just love the story so much. Like
Mhm.
the good outweighs the bad. Like it's still
Yeah.
a consistent story that thematically makes a lot of sense with the original trilogy. That is like a good prequel, that fills in gaps, that expands the world, etc. And that just doesn't happen in the sequels for me, where
Yep,
I'm like,
because it doesn't.
yeah, they
It
contradict
just
each
doesn't.
other, they contradict other things. Like the whole thing with like Anakin slash Vader coming back in the end and killing Palpatine. So he is actually the chosen one. It's just not how everybody thought it was going to go. And then that's just out the window because Palpatine is alive. I just don't have enough words to express how much I hate that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't. So first of all, Pete, correct parenting.
I
Secondly,
agree with that, Pete. Yeah.
by the time the ninth one came out, I was resounded in my feeling. I was like, I'm never going to watch it because of how angry the last two have made me. So I had no context of what was going on in the last film, other than I was like, okay, I assume we've had this Snoke character and now that's kind of gone to shit. So I don't really know what's happening now, but fine. And then I started hearing on this little thing called the internet that Palpatine was back. And I was like,
Yeah.
excuse me, what? And I said to Josh, I was like, have you heard what is going on in this final movie? He goes, yeah, it's fucking moronic. And I was like, yeah, exactly. Like, what is happening? And it was just one of those things that I was like, why? You can't come up with anything new? Like, what? Why? No, no, no.
There was an audible when we went. So we did go to the cinema to see Rise of Skywalker, somewhat reluctantly, but I mean, I was always going to go watch a Star Wars movie live with an audience. Cool, but there was an audible groan, and then I think when they do, oh, somehow he has returned. You're like, ah. And then when he appears and he's like, the dark side is a path to many abilities, some consider. There was an, I heard audibly somebody go, oh, fuck off. I just lost it. And I started laughing. I'm like,
That's
oh my
amazing.
God, this movie is so bad.
So bad.
I have not heard of this Duel of the Fates script. Is that something you guys have heard of?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember that it sounded amazing. it was like
It read well anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you remember more about it. You tell it. You're gonna tell it better than me.
I don't remember. I'm gonna look it up right now.
There was like somebody's original script for
Colin Trevorrow.
for the trilogy, or like
Oh,
for
so like a fan fiction script?
not even like it was like
He
an actual proposal for the
Oh,
script
wow, okay.
before they got JJ back, I think.
Yeah, he was the original
Oh,
director
JJ.
of the third movie. He made that Jurassic Park.
Oh, yes,
reboot.
okay, I do know about this. Yeah, then JJ came in and kind of just like everything went AWOL at that point, and they were like, "We're just making decisions as we go." And
We're just gonna do what
that's it.
Twitter wants because that's a good idea.
So
Yeah.
Kylo Ren discovers a Sith holocron in Darth Vader's castle on Mustafar, which, by the way, I think we should rename Lava Land because that sounds amazing.
Isn't that great, Lava Land?
Yeah. And it leads him to seek the training of a really old guy who taught Emperor Palpatine's master, Darth Plagueis. Fun.
See, that's how you connect things
Yeah.
and make it like people are familiar with it without just recycling.
It's
Yeah.
little
It's not that
threads.
hard.
Exactly. Just threads.
He also reunites the 3 original cast members, but obviously that,
Yeah.
would have been an issue unless they use CGI or something like that.
Which,
there were also Force ghosts of Luke, Yoda, and Obi-Wan in it, which would have been nice.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm skimming.
So I didn't go see that movie because that would be torture. And then I did not go see Solo either. So those are the 2 Star Wars films that I have not seen.
Solo is not good.
Yeah, I've
still
heard
not
really
seen
mixed
Solo.
things. But see, the thing for me with Solo, right, is that a movie is supposed to have some kind of transformational aspect to a character. And I'm like, we already know Han. So like, is it just how he gets the Millennium Falcon? Like, is that all that it is? Like, why do we need this movie?
There was a really forced love interest with
Amelia Clark.
Emilia Clarke. That was it. I was about to say Daenerys.
I agree. They deserve better because I love both of them independently of it. But in terms of because Disney had its little acquisition, right? And then we started getting all this crazy material that they started pumping out every year. Mando was the first one that kind of showed up on the scene as, all right, we've got an original Star Wars series, generally well received the first season. Spaghetti Western feel, very different take on Star Wars. I enjoyed the first season of Mandalorian. Yeah. Were you guys kind of in with that initial hype train for Mando?
So I have unpopular Mando opinions.
Lay it out.
Because I had a good time with the first season, but I never quite connected to it. But I understand why people saw it as this like breath of fresh air for Star Wars, because it was the first like completely new thing. So I understood, but I just didn't quite connect with the vibe. And then on season 2, I fell off completely because there were all these characters showing up where I could feel from how they were being introduced that it was meant to be an ooh moment. And I'm like, who the fuck is
that?
And
I mean,
now,
yes, Evie, he does.
Yes,
he does. Better.
I just like I think I just have trouble connecting to a character that's wearing a mask the entire time and I can't see his facial expression.
That's fair.
And
I completely get that. Like, for me, I liked the first season. I think just because it felt different, but it took me several episodes to get on board. I was thinking this is really slow. And I don't typically like spaghetti westerns or westerns in general. It's not my thing. So as soon as we started watching, I was sitting there going, when is stuff gonna happen? Is stuff gonna happen? Because I would love to see anything happen at this point. And I think it was about episode 4 or 5 that I was thinking, okay, this is pretty decent. And then season 2 came along and thought, all right, it's fine. But I loved the end when Luke showed up at the end of season 2. But like I was saying earlier, that to me felt we've concluded our story. The whole point was to get Grogu with a Jedi.
Yeah.
He's now with the Jedi, so
Stop.
it should be done. Like, just stop.
Yeah.
But they don't know how because it's money, so they just keep going.
But I actually think the thing I always remember about Mando, and it's probably my favorite bit of Mando, is Bill Burr.
Oh my God, yes.
That was such a
great.
That was such a good subplot, and I thought there should have been more of that in Mando.
Yeah, that was such a good episode. I really enjoyed that with Bill Burr. Oh man, yeah.
And
I also just love Bill Burr in general.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I love Bill Burr. But also, like, it got me excited to see what they would do with Thrawn, because I really love Thrawn. But of course, the payoff is just
nothing.
So meh.
So we feel kind of meh in general. I feel right, like about Mando at this point. And Book of Boba Fett. Did you compel yourselves to watch the Obi-Wan series like I did and hope that it would get good?
So,
because we love Ewan McGregor, and we also kind of have a real soft spot for Hayden Christensen.
I was there for the reivindication of Hayden Christensen.
Same.
And the thing is, I don't think Obi-Wan was a great show at all. I didn't like the Reva character at all. Like, does the actress deserve hate? Absolutely not. Like, that was awful.
So bad.
Well, I didn't like the character. I did like the fight between Vader and Obi-Wan. I thought that was very cool. Like, the scene where he breaks his masks was really cool. Probably my favorite part of the show and the only thing I remember really well. However, that show did for me what Mando did for a lot of people, in that it reminded me how much I love Star Wars, because I was so burnt out. Like, I've never seen Solo. I still haven't seen it. I hadn't seen Rogue One until like a few years ago. Everybody loved Mando, and I was like, why am I not getting it? Have I just is this just over for me? You know, I wasn't really rewatching Star Wars anymore. And then I got excited about them bringing Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen back. So that show got me really excited, and I was a bit like disappointed as it went on, and just like, oh, this is not quite doing what I wanted it to do.
Sure.
But I'm like attached to it just because it reminded me that I love Star Wars. And to be fair, that's probably not as much the show being good as just them putting Ewan McGregor in my face and being like, hey, remember him? And I'm like, yeah, that works.
I think we can all agree, if you get Ewan McGregor shoved in your face, it's pretty
no one's
nasty.
going to say no to that. I mean, no one. My thing with that show is that I felt it was terrible. Just didn't meet any of the expectations I had, because I was also super game for this redemption for Hayden Christensen, because I feel like if the only thing that people have seen Hayden Christensen in is Star Wars, they're going to have a very skewed idea of how he is as an actor. And it's like they blame him for the dialogue that he was given. And I have to keep reminding people, that's his job. Like, that's literally his job to say those lines and pretend that he means them. That's the point. Yeah. But when it came to that story, I was sitting there going, okay, why do we need it? Like, it's just always one of those things for me with Star Wars that I sit back and I go, how does this actually enhance the overall narrative of what we know of Star Wars? Is it going to give us more background information that makes it a more enriching experience when we go back and we watch the series? And I didn't feel that. I just felt like it would have been so much more interesting had it been Obi-Wan living on, the planet, watching Luke from a distance and like trying to like figure all that out and everything else. Like, having Leia be the, there's no drama because it's like, Leia's gonna grow up, Luke is gonna grow up. Like, none of these people's lives are in peril, which was something that I felt really is what I struggled the most with the show, because I was thinking there's really no drama in this series to get me to connect to the characters, because I had zero care over what's her face, Rika, I don't remember what her name was, but loathed her character because she got no proper character development and was just terrible for like 5 episodes. And then you go, oh, she was a youngling, and we're like, and now we're supposed to care. And but with Andor, when that came in, I was sitting there thinking, how is this going to be different from Obi-Wan, in the sense that we know certain characters have to live, right? We know Cassian has to live until the events of Rogue One. And then obviously with Mon Mothma, we know she's going to be alive at some point later on down the road. But they did such a good job with their little mini arcs throughout the season of introducing characters that we didn't know. And that's why it was such a better investment, because you want to know what's going to happen to them.
But Andor was written like a proper TV show with an actual story with things to say.
With things to say, right? It's like they gave him a script and a proper director.
And like Tony Gilroy is also extremely talented. Like, I think he wrote and directed one of the Bourne movies as well, the fourth one maybe, which was good, not as good as the other ones, but like he had a track record. And I just find that the problem with a lot of Disney stuff, and this also goes for some of the Marvel stuff, is they try to pack it way too much full of stuff because they know that it's just empty, but it still remains empty with so much unnecessary fluff. Like, really sit down and think about doing a character-driven, slow 10 episode of just Obi-Wan drinking himself into an oblivion on Tatooine, and like sort of then learning to really live with himself again after the events of Revenge of the Sith, and saying, okay, I'm going to be a mentor to Luke. We don't need all of the other stuff in the show.
It's that's exactly it. Like, all of these Disney Plus shows, these established IP Disney Plus shows, they're just banking on your prior attachment to the characters.
Exactly.
Like Obi-Wan, or Obi-Wan Kenobi, is that the name of the show? I don't know. That the Obi-Wan show, like, connected with me not at all because of what the show was doing. Like, it connected with me purely based on other Star Wars things that I already loved. So that's kind of cheating, and you can get away with that to a certain extent, but you run out of material really quickly because people aren't stupid. And I just, it baffles me that these major studios don't understand that. Like, your viewers aren't dumb. Like, they might, like, sure, you might lose a couple of people if you have the first 2 episodes be really slow, that have no attention span. But like, if you just try to do payoff, it's boring.
Amy Sherman-Palladino is a show creator, and years ago she gave an interview and she said something that had stuck with me forever. And she said, your audience is as smart as you will allow them to be. And it is one of those things that Andor had faith in its audience, and Obi-Wan just didn't, and was giving it pure fan service throughout most of it. And then with Andor, you just, for me, the first 3 episodes were a bit slow. Honestly, it took me till episode 3 to really feel like, okay, this is
same, to be honest.
But as soon as I saw the gift that is Andy Serkis show up on my screen, I was so happy. Like, I can't even explain to you.
One way out.
Yes.
One way out.
Oh my gosh. I lost it in that episode because you knew, right? Like, you knew something was coming, and what an emotional punch to the gut. It was just perfection.
So We were in we went to Star Wars Celebration, which is like Comic-Con for Star Wars nerds in London last year. And
it was amazing.
It was amazing. And so there was like a group of, I don't know, there was like 50 of them, all dressed in the prison outfits from Andor. And you would hear them from in the convention center. Oh, they're in that room over there because they're all screaming one way out.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
You could track where they were at all times. It was great.
We got into a panel for Andor where they previewed a bit of season 2, and they were obviously in that panel as well. And one of the people that they had talking was the costume designer, and he was talking about how he designed those costumes specifically. And he was they showed him in the crowd where they were sitting, like they had sat them like in the middle.
That's
and
awesome.
He got emotional seeing all of these people wearing the costumes that he designed. And then we came out of that just going like, this is something that only something like Star Wars can do that, right? Like somebody whose job is to be a costume designer. Sure, we can sit here and say, oh, the costumes were great after coming out of a movie, but that's never going to come back to them because they don't have that interaction with the public like that loves the thing.
Also, when you take the internet out of the equation, Star Wars fans are ridiculously excited and happy and loving, you know?
Yeah, internet Star Wars fans are a little bit toxic. But the ones you meet in the wild, generally pretty good. I agree with this comment right now that woman whose name escapes my memory right now, but you got real strong Nazi Germany vibes from that show. And that's the thing with that show is that it took you on such a roller coaster with so many different characters. And I actually cared about all of them to the point where like the speech that Stellan Skarsgård gives about, sacrifice was such an amazing scene. I Can't Swim was heartbreaking. And like, I didn't know how I was ever going to recover from that moment. I don't think I have. Then Mon Mothma with her daughter. Like, there were so many individual moments in that show. And also not only that, but you were learning about background content that just was so fascinating to me. Like, what is fashion like on Coruscant? What are marriage traditions like from different parts of the world? How does the government work? What are the inner workings of the Empire? Like, what is being an imperial worker on the day-to-day look like? And you would think that sounds boring, but it's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's the content I never knew I needed. For sure. Like that woman that you mentioned, the like Empire.
She's terrifying.
She was terrifying. But the funny thing was, like, and this is how well written this show was for once, that like in the early episodes, it's not like you like her, but you're kind of rooting for her when she's like experiencing sexism.
And, like, in the workplace.
And you're like, you go get those idiots that you work with. And then as it progresses, you're like, okay, but don't get them that badly. I don't want you to succeed that much.
Back off a little bit. Yeah, we're overcompensating.
It was a very George R.R. Martin type of character.
Yeah. No one can remember this woman's name, but we all know who we're talking about. The blonde, scary woman who made everyone's balls shrivel up into nothing. Like, that's who we're talking about. I seriously though, it was just one of those things that the acting in that show across the board was excellent. And you would think that because Cassian is your main person, technically you'd be the most invested in his storyline. And I was thinking he's just part of this collective that I'm interested in learning about. Yes, that's her name.
I think the best move they did was sort of making it an ensemble show. And so when you cut away from one subplot to another subplot, all the plots were pretty riveting. And all of the performances were amazing. Also, shout out to Genevieve O'Reilly, Irish, by the way, as Mon Mothma. I thought her subplot, her putting on this face in the political sphere, was exactly this kind of Star Wars that I've always wanted, Well, not always.
It's so subtle. It's subtle. And it really has that vibes of A New Hope, right? With the rebellion working behind the scenes and trying to get everything into order and into place. And it's just so good. Yeah, it's the motley group that does the heist. It's just all of it was so well orchestrated, put together, and it just felt so human, right? Like there were so many human emotions in that show. The one thing I will say that really I struggled with, and this is such a niche thing, is that Fiona Shaw, who plays Cassian's mother, is Petunia Dursley from the Harry Potter films. And I was
Also
like,
Irish.
she is not a loving person. I can't buy it. Like, I was just like, I cannot unsee what I know.
She's actually
But
a very lovely person.
She actually is so funny. I happened to she was a guest lecturer for my master's like a year before Andor came out or something.
Amazing.
And she mentioned in that lecture that she had something coming up that she couldn't talk about. And when something for like that wasn't like a play or whatever. And after I remember I went to you and I was like, it has got to be either the MCU or Star Wars, right? Like if she can't talk about it, it's something big.
Yeah.
She's signing an NDA. It's a Disney thing. Yeah.
And then I kind of forgot about it, and we didn't watch Andor straight away just because
we didn't either.
And obviously, and then we heard, oh, it's amazing. And then when we finally watched it and I saw her on screen, I was like, oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can't remember how soon after. I feel like my daughter was only a couple months old at that point when it came out. And I was like, I guess we'll watch this. And we were so tired and we were like, just one more episode. Like, it was just one of those things that we were like, it's fine. We'll be tired tomorrow.
I love that feeling so much. When you find that show that you just get swept up in it. Well, and it's the same with a book. Just one more chapter.
Yeah.
And your critical brain starts to switch off a little bit. It's great.
Exactly. If you can fully allow yourself to be immersed in a world, in an experience, it's such a fun time, right? And Star Wars is one of those things that it's so vast, and you guys have more background with it because you've read some of the books, which is so interesting. At some point, I'm going to have to try some of the books and see if I like them and see how it fits for me. But it's such a vast world to get lost in. And I feel like for me, the original trilogy is such a comfort watch for me because I associate it with my childhood. It brings back positive memories. Like anytime a film starts with the 20th Century Studios logo, I'm like, oh, Star Wars is going to play. It's like an automatic thing in my brain where I'm like, oh, it's Star Wars. Like there's no other film that starts after that. So, it's just one of those things that is so personal to me that I just love Star Wars. And I've talked about it a little bit on my channel, but my daughter, when she was born, we had an extended stay at the hospital. And there was one night that I looked at my husband and I was like, I'm so hungry. Like it was like 9 p.m. I was like, I really want pad thai. So we ordered pad thai at 9 p.m. and Return of the Jedi was on. And that was our first family movie night at the hospital. Like we had Star Wars on, we had our pad thai, and our little newborn just like there absorbing what she didn't understand at all. But for us, it's a core memory now. It's great.
I love that.
I think
that's so great.
That's the number one thing about Star Wars is that it's associated with so many core memories. That's just what it is. So like the box set of VHS tapes that I had was my uncle's in Spain, and it came out in 1991. And when you put in the first movie, there's an ad for Terminator 2.
Wow.
At the beginning of it.
I love that.
And I love it. Every time I watch A New Hope, I'm like, there should be a Terminator 2 ad in front of this.
How dare you, Evie? I won't allow it. It's not allowed. She loves it or she gets no food, one or the other.
The great thing about Star Wars now as well, because it's so expansive, because I think we probably all went through the same process of like grieving and anger about
Yeah.
Disney and what it's done to Star Wars, and but it's what really helped me like come out of that was discovering the books and the comics and just
Mhm.
seeing just how expansive it really is. There's a lot of stuff
Sure.
there that's very, 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 very mid, if even,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of stuff that's really fun. And I think that really helped me shift my mentality to me, the Star Wars like canon that you can't like erase is
Yeah.
the original trilogy, especially,
Yeah.
but like also like the 6 George Lucas films. He's
Yeah.
the creator and he created this story. And like whether you like the prequels more or less, like
Yep,
the
they're his
story
story.
itself, goes check out.
Exactly.
Everything else is fan fiction.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
the Disney stuff is fan fiction. The books are fan fiction. The comics are fan fiction. So you get to pick and choose what you
Right.
like and what you want to consider canon for you. And
That's
I
so
just think
true.
that's so fun.
That's
I've
a
been
great
building my own headcanon, and my own headcanon is like a mixture of some of the official canon books that have been released in the Disney era, some of them,
Mhm.
and then some of the original EU books, which are
Mhm.
also like a mixture of pretty great and pretty crap.
Yeah.
But again, you're just like, I'm gonna ignore this one because I don't like it, and this
Yeah.
one is great. So that's
Right?
now headcanon.
I
And
love
that's
that.
That's just a fun adventure as well to go on, like reading.
Absolutely.
So
So we have to wrap up a little bit, but did you have a last thing to throw in there, Carlos?
yeah, for you, if you want to read some of the books, Heir to the Empire is a must,
Okay.
and I think you would say the Dark Lord trilogy.
yes, I think given that you love the original trilogy above everything else,
You.
and you're like so like all of us disappointed in what they did with
Yes.
the continuation. Heir to the Empire is the original continuation that was meant to be canon because at the time that was canon. So
Okay.
it is the Luke, Han, and Leia continuation after Return of the Jedi. I
Okay.
actually haven't read it yet, but I keep telling people to read it. I forget that I haven't read it yet.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll buddy read it. Maybe that'll be
Yes.
what we do.
Yes.
Okay.
but it is the real 7, 8, and 9.
Okay. I'm interested in that. So last and final thing, of all the lightsaber colors, what is your lightsaber color of choice? Mine is green, which is what I wore today in honor of Yoda's lightsaber.
Purple, motherfucker.
That's Josh's. That is 100% my husband's. Yeah. He's all about Samuel L. Jackson purple.
Yep.
See, if it was me, I'd say blue. But realistically, if I were to buy myself a lightsaber, I'd buy a red one.
Yeah.
That's fair. Growing up, like, I really loved the red. Blue for me was my least favorite. I was like, oh, it's kind of basic. Like, Luke's fine, but whatever. But I loved that only Yoda really had green at that point, and the red was just so iconic. So I mean, it's hard.
Just cool.
It's hard not to go for the red, 100%.
Yeah.
We whenever we go to Disney World in the next few years, I'm wanting to do that build your own lightsaber.
Oh yeah.
thing.
Cool.
And I'm gonna have to decide at that point if I commit to Yoda or if I go to a Sith.
I'm actually surprised there was nothing
Exciting.
like that at Star Wars Celebration last year. But I spent like €150 on Star Wars shit shirts, like including this. Just, yeah.
I
That was
couldn't
fun.
find mine.
Good
I got
choices.
like one of the skyline of Tatooine, which is also my tattoo that I got like a month ago.
Oh yeah, we have Star Wars tattoos that we didn't show off.
Oh, try to show them. Okay.
There's
I
a
can-
TIE
I can
fighter
see that.
and an X-wing.
Yolanda, I can't see yours.
I don't know how to do this in front of the
Oh,
camera.
that's awesome. Oh, I love that so much. That's amazing. I love that. Okay. Tell everybody where they can find you. I'm sure they know, but tell them.
On YouTube.
On YouTube. That's right.
Yeah,
Only
we
on
are.
YouTube,
We are.
nowhere else on the internet.
Yeah, we are StoryTube. So it's spelled tube as TOOB because I thought that was funny, and we also have a Discord, an unexpected party link is in somewhere, and yeah, we're also in Ireland. for now.
Yes, you can find us in Ireland. Maybe
If you
start
want to
with
find them in the
people-
wild or at a Star Wars convention, it's Ireland or a Star Wars convention. That's it. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us in the middle of a day. If you are in the North American continent, if you are in the UK or anywhere else in the world, thank you for joining us as well. It's evening time for Carlos and Yolanda, and Carlos just got home from work to jump on, so I appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us. You can let us know in the comments below what your feelings about Star Wars are. I don't really care if they're positive or negative because we all have positive and negative comments on it. But the most important thing is what your lightsaber color is. So that's it.
Obviously. Yeah.
We love you too, Evie.
Purple, motherfucker.
All right, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, Laura.